Does your partner cheat? While he or she may not be the type of cheetah that roams the African safari, this individual is the two-timer who thinks he or she is slick. What about a pedophile or the subtle freeloader who wants the best of both worlds, the one who gets his foot in the door with the words, "Let's move in together," instead of, "Will you marry me?" It is said that love is blind, but take a few moments to consider the view and see the red flags in front of you. My name is Fiona Harewood, and I'm the author of I Did It, You Can Too. River Never Smooth, Reclaiming Power After Abuse, and the newly released 24 Days Prayer to the Rescue. I am continuing my call to action series on fixing relationship problems as soon as they surface, with the focus of today's video being red flags to which we must pay close attention. The last 3 videos reminded us that 1, we should call out problems as they occur in our relationships instead of allowing bad behavior to be repeated. 2, we must love ourselves enough that the first time we are assaulted in a relationship, God forbid, becomes the last time. And 3, we should beware of gaslighting in our relationships, those intentional acts that an abuser may use purposing to skew our ability to interpret reality. Today we will be looking at 3 of those red flags in relationships to which close attention must be paid, how to spot them and what to do about them. Dealing with the topic of domestic violence is challenging, and when you must break it down, it becomes even harder. I always say that I wish my platform was more fun, but it isn't. Somebody needs to deal with the hard stuff. This video was a hard one even for me, and it made me ponder the reality that there are some things we wish we didn't have to deal with. There's an old saying that tells us some things are better left unsaid. That would be some things, but not everything. Today's focus is not on the red flags you may have seen in my video, Relationship and Red Flags, or the typical red flag videos out there that highlight the first assault, the disrespectful behavior, the act of distancing someone from her friends and family, controlling finances, and the like. This video will examine some uncomfortable stuff, so forgive me if it makes you cringe. If you're still with me, let's get into it. Never allow someone to have his cake and eat it too, or enjoy the privileges of marriage without commitment. What would make a couple live together for years, even adding children to their union, when there is either no proposal of marriage or commitment is indefinitely postponed? That behavior constitutes psychological abuse for the person who would like to be married, while the other partner wants nothing to do with tying the knot, yet prevents their partner from moving on. At one time, couples used to discuss marriage during courtship. It's possible that no longer happens because statistics reveal that fewer people are opting for marriage and more are cohabiting. In these situations, a woman is viewed differently if she broaches the topic of marriage in a relationship. When that happens, sometimes a man becomes scared and disappears. It's been said that if he runs away after that question, then the woman has her answer. He wasn't the right one in the first place. Cohabiting has become the norm because, for the most part, women have lowered their standards. They have allowed their partners all the privileges of marriage but seem afraid to actually discuss marriage. It might work well for both parties if they took time with the relationship, put all their cards on the table, and left sex until after marriage. That would translate into less hurt in this world. Now, if both parties agree that they do not want to be married, why seek marital privileges by living together? Foregoing cohabitation would make it one sin less to deal with. Yet, even making the decision to get married is not easy. A young woman may find herself pregnant, and she and her significant other may decide that marriage is the best course of action. In many instances, it is not. Getting pregnant is not enough of a reason for any marriage, especially if glaring red flags are visible and efforts at counseling or changing the situation proved futile. It becomes worse if any form of abuse already exists in the relationship. It may be better not to get married. However, if you decide against marriage, then continuing in the relationship is not the answer. On the other hand, some women believe they can hold on to a man by having a child, so they get pregnant. And some men may use reverse psychology, thereby keeping a woman pregnant and possibly barefoot, because with children comes some level of control over the woman. It is better to eliminate red flag situations altogether or suffer the consequences like I did. I share my story because I cannot rewrite the past, so my aim is to help others to steer clear of those heartbreaking situations or to help them get out ASAP. But there are some people who say to me, and they may even say to you, don't focus on your failures. To those people I say, remembering the places from where God has brought me is not focusing on my failures. We are cautioned in Christian Experience and Teachings of Ellen G. White, page 204, that we have nothing to fear for the future except as we shall forget the way the Lord has led us and his teachings in our past history. So, to forget my past and how God has delivered me, that is disastrous. Furthermore, throughout God's word, he urges us to remember. The psalmist in Division 143 and verse 5 said, I remember the days of old. I meditate on all that you have done. I ponder the work of your hands. In my case, I ponder the mess from which God has delivered me. And as a result, I'm able to help others redirect their steps. So, in remembering my past, even though it shows me where I have failed, I can say, but God, and lift my heart in thanks to him for his deliverance. He can help you to look back in praise and thanksgiving too. So, before I got sidetracked, I was about to share an experience with you. In chapters 7 and 8 of River Never Smooth, Reclaiming Power After Abuse, I mentioned that 6 weeks prior to marrying my first husband, the wedding was canceled because my parents found out that my fiancé had not told his family that he was getting married. Weird, right? That was the excuse he needed to bow out. Talk about embarrassment. I was the one left with the task of informing the guests we had invited that there would be no wedding. You would think that after such humiliation, I would be done with the man, right? No. I disregarded several red flags prior to the cancellation of the wedding, and shortly afterwards, I learned that he was dating someone else. We broke up for a little while, but I went right back to him, and we were eventually married. A marriage that should not have taken place. It was a divorce waiting to happen. So, consider who you're agreeing to marry and why. Also, know that it is better to be single than to be shacked up in a dead-end relationship. Never allow anyone to have their cake and eat it too, or to enjoy the privileges of marriage without commitment. Secondly, have you ever been set up, played? It feels something like this. Your spouse or partner has plans, so he or she goes ahead and sets the stage for you to be out of the picture. Let's say he is planning to bring his other woman to the marital home. I'm using this example because it happened to me. Yes, I was played in that way. We seldom went out together, and besides church and work, I hardly went out. So I was elated when he planned a getaway for my daughter and me on an upcoming holiday. The children and Mrs. Mackey haven't seen you and Kiana in a while, so you can go see them on Emancipation Day coming up, he said one evening, encouraging me to visit my friend's children and their grandmother. I was elated and agreed without stopping to think. Red flag number 1. He never sent us anywhere. Well, Emancipation Day came and we were ready to leave. He was still in bed. I will meet you at Mrs. Mackey around 5 o'clock so that you don't have a hard time carrying Kiana, he said. That was too much generosity. Had I been thinking, I would have recognized red flag number 2. Why was he ensuring that I didn't get home before a certain time? It wasn't until I returned home later than anticipated, because I waited and he never showed up to get us. That was when I saw all the red flags flying high in front of me. Red flag number 3. The bed was well made. He seldom did chores, so since I left him in bed that morning, it would have been characteristic to find the bed unmade when I returned. Observing that our wedding photo was not in its prominent position in the living room, and that no personal items for my daughter or me, including clothing, were visible, I came to the sad realization that I was played. All traces of our child and me were completely erased so that my then Christian husband could entertain one of his women. Somebody may ask, how did you deal with the situation after the deception, and how do you repair the lack of trust? Immediately, I will let you know that that was and still is not easy to deal with. It's no wonder the Bible warns against acts such as adultery and fornication, and it even says one can put away a spouse because of adultery. What made my situation worse was that I confronted the woman who spent the day at my home with my then husband. She was shocked by the news that we were married, since he deceived her by erasing any trace of my daughter and me to accommodate her. But you would not believe her response. Her exact words, "Well, I'm sorry. It's too late to tell me that now. I grew up in church. I know nothing about fighting, but at that moment, I felt like beating her down." Thank God for my cousin who was there with me and let me know that I had overstayed my welcome. At the time that incident occurred, and even now, I cannot tell you why I remained in the marriage for another 4 years. It probably was the most selfless thing I could have done. With God's help, I did forgive, and with time, the pain subsided, but that didn't stop him from having other affairs. Also, the decision to rebuild trust is an individual choice. What I do know is that it is an extremely difficult situation to deal with. Hence, the reason we should heed those red flags and check situations before they spiral out of control. Know the person to whom you are married or with whom you have a relationship so that an out of character cue will start all the red flags waving, causing you not to be played. Pay close attention to those out of character moves. Follow up with some questions, and if you suspect anything, interrupt at least one of the ordered plans. You may discover gold. If you cannot deal with what you've uncovered, seek help. No man is an island. Now, the final red flag for this video. Watch those inappropriate gestures. That person may be rehearsing for an upcoming occasion. It wasn't long into my second marriage before I realized that I was married to a pervert. When at home, I couldn't pass by without him touching or grabbing at me very inappropriately. Someone may ask, wasn't he your husband? Why couldn't he touch you? A simple touch may be okay, but those indecent acts, and sometimes in the presence of your children or others, are never cool. At first, I simply thought that was his way of showing affection, but it became irritating, and I eventually grew tired of it. I addressed it a few times, but he never really desisted. What I didn't realize was that he was perfecting his tactics for an ultimate stage. Before long, he was arrested because he took that behavior to the streets and started publicly molesting women. And I dare anyone to say to me it was because I didn't entertain him that he went out. To those who may agree, I'm sorry. God made women as helpmeet, helpers, or companions, not sex slaves or sex toys. Some people have twisted fantasies regarding sex. They get hung up on pornography and expect their spouses to satisfy their fantasies. Just in case you didn't know, being hung up on pornography is another red flag. You may watch more about that indecent assault incident in this video. Protect yourselves from strangers. My story and 16 tips to prevent groping and sexual assault. We may tend to see men alone as predators. The Bible reminds us that there is nothing new under the sun, and a sister brought this matter of red flags forcibly to my mind during an early morning prayer session. In studying Sampson, she mentioned that Sampson should have noticed not only the red flags regarding Delilah, but also the flashing red lights. I know you must have heard the account of Sampson and Delilah. If not, be sure to read all about it in Judges chapters 15 and 16. Sampson was one of the judges whom God used to accomplish his purpose. God had a special life planned for him and laid out some restrictions by which he should live. Sadly, Sampson violated those restrictions. One of his downfalls was the woman Delilah. Sampson should have seen all the flashing red lights when Delilah tried relentlessly to discover the source of his strength. Even if he saw the red flags, he didn't take heed, and eventually his life came to a tragic end. Some red flags in relationships begin with slight annoyances. If any action causes you to cringe or feel uncomfortable, it is one you need to check. Address the situation. If it warrants it, suggest counseling. If your partner won't comply, then it is time to take further action, because as sure as the sun rises, something will happen that will cause you to regret the fact that you didn't treat it seriously from its inception. So, there you have it. 3 harsh red flags to which you must pay close attention. If you can think of any more, list them in the comments below. You may be sparing someone tons of heartaches. In the next video, I will discuss problems you may encounter with having children from different partners. And oh, my last video on gaslighting garnered more than 300 views in just 2 weeks. That was because of prayer and the fact that you viewed it and shared. Thank you. And remember to share this video and subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so. See you next time.